Meeting for Tuesday, October 12th. As we always do, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up, we have Town Clerk Elizabeth Gaffey and Town Engineer Carl Baldoff. Discussion and vote and proposed redistricting. Welcome.
Good evening. All right, we'll pull that out. As you're aware, the 2020 federal census numbers have been released. All communities in the state are reviewing their precincts as required by state law so that they are compact, contiguous, contain no more than 4,000 residents, use census blocks and center street line or other natural boundaries, and are respectful of the neighborhoods. The town charter, section 2.5, redistricting of precincts, requires the select board to review the precincts every 10 years for the purpose of determining whether the boundaries should be withdrawn in whole or in part. Through a collaborative process, the town proposed a revision of some precinct boundaries to comply with the above referenced standards. The town, after the select board vote, will submit a map to the Local Election Districts Review Commission and anticipates the new map will be approved soon and take effect December 31st, 2021. So in the packages that you received from EFA would be the map with the population of 26,383. The census map block, which lets you know the precincts, the breakdown of the demographics, and where the lines currently were and where they're going to be. And then a legal meets and bounds description of how the precincts will be broken up. So currently, this is our fourth rendition of the map. Carl and I worked on it all summer. They had sent it differently. We gave them projections of all the new growth. So the precincts can't have more than 4,000 people in them. We have to look at the growth from 2020, from the federal census to the next federal census of 2030. And hope that we're within, they only give you a 5% minimum maximum to fit into the population that's there. So after a few revisions and moving the lines here and there, they believe with the growth and everything, we will fall into where we belong for 10 more years when we look at this again. So there's about 15 streets involved in moving. Precinct 6 doesn't have any needs and bound changes. Just a little bit in precinct 1, 7, very minimal, 7 and 8. What 7 lost, 8 gained, it was very minimal. 2 and 3 picked up a little bit of something, and 4 lost something to 5, a little bit of something to 5. I could get particular about the streets if you're interested, I have no problem. But we asked and they couldn't give us a map with the parcels and the lot numbers so that I could tell you exactly where it's going. I have a good idea, but it's until the LEDRC votes it and makes it perfect, then we'll know exactly where the lines will go. But we have a good estimate of where we're going to go. So we need you, if you have any questions, certainly can answer them. Either I or Carl could do that, and then we need you to vote on the 3 things: the needs and bounds, the maps of the block, and the maps.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Liz or Carl?
Are all the precincts even on population, to the best of your knowledge?
As best as they can be, yes.
Okay, and what is that approximate number?
So they're around, it looks like the lowest I have is almost 3,200, and the highest is not quite, it's at 3,454, not quite 3,500. So they have some room to grow, to take care of. When we were talking to them throughout, we were telling them the construction that was taking place between Huntington Drive, the stuff going on West Street, and any other new projects that we saw coming that were going to be grown. So there was quite a few, so they took that all into account when they came up with the map.
And so this is done every 10 years, so this won't be done for another 10?
That's right, it's done after the federal census.
And will you revisit the numbers halfway through or at any point along the way, or the projections today or the projections for 10 years?
They can, through the charter, it does say no more than 9 precincts, no more than 4,000, so we certainly will watch as it grows. Unfortunately for us, the federal census, they knock on the door to make sure you answer the census for them. We do not. We mail you your annual census, so that's when we're off about 1,500 people from what the federal census came to what answers the annual town.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
thanks, Liz. That's a really succinct explanation. I appreciate that. And without going street by street, I was more interested in the dates that you said when this takes effect.
So I needed to bring this before you before October 30th, hence why I'm here tonight. This will go to them, and then they have till December 31st to okay the map. I
So-
also wanted to get, honestly, a little bit out ahead before the other districts draw their lines.
Yeah.
Reps in their states, however, they'll draw lines, but if we get this in, they're gonna say Walpole voted it to be like this. So.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
Just one quick question. So when, assuming it gets approved, what's the process look like to inform people who are affected by a shift in the boundary, precinct
So
A to B?
should it go just the way that we have it here, which is their idea as well. In your 2022 January census, will come with an insert, letting you, making you aware of the Mass General law that makes us change this. Pay attention to what your precinct is, and so now we have notified you that your precinct has changed.
Do any of the precinct changes also mean a change in voting location?
No,
So they all,
I
so,
already thought of that, and yeah, no.
good, okay. So
Right.
if I didn't know I moved from 7 to 8, I know I'm in the same spot, I just move over one line.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, 3 took over some of 4, but they all voted Blackburn Hall. Actually 2, a little bit of 3, right, so Forsythia, half of Forsythia already was precinct 2, now all of Forsythia will be precinct 2. As far as, I can tell from here, so they'll all vote now at Old Post Road. So yeah, you will have that there. 6, 7, 5, 4 and 5, 6 is the same. That would probably be the precincts 2 and 3.
Yeah, so I mean, you can only do what you can do about notifying people, but that'd be my only real
We
concern.
will, and then before, of course, at this moment, after this gets okay, the next election is June. We have plenty of time to, hook them up to the Secretary of State's, the Commonwealth's website, so you can check, where do I vote?
Yeah.
What precinct am I in? We will push that to make sure that everybody knows that through the whole nomination paper process and all of that going forward.
And then I only had one other question. There's a reference in the chart to a block ID, which is apparently the level at which you do the looking. What is a block ID? What does that really
So
mean?
is that really long number?
Yeah.
That we're looking at?
Yep.
Okay, so on this map, the census is done with census tract numbers. So there's a number in front of it and behind it. This number here is what tells me which census tract you're in.
Okay.
So that I can tell where you belong on my, we blew this up, pasted it together, so that I could see where it would happen. So this is why, so these two with their numbers from the census tract block moved over here.
Okay.
And in 4 and 5, same thing over here, and up here on Homewood.
So I'm presuming that entire blocks move, however you designate those.
However they wanted to
Yeah.
make all the numbers fit.
Yeah,
Right.
okay,
Yep, you're
good.
right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Liz.
Nancy?
Appreciate it.
And then just the annual question, the prison numbers.
Okay, so the prison, because I had to ask, if you want an exemption from that, you would have to petition your legislator. Otherwise, it's wherever they lay their head, 51% of the time is what precinct they're, is where they live.
Right.
Whether they vote or not.
But they don't vote.
They don't, but they're still part of that precinct unless you want to get an exemption from them.
Right. And so when we do just split up RTMs based on precincts,
Well, the number for 5, which is what we're talking about for the prison,
is this affecting any changes of those?
no.
They're staying
No,
the same?
Exactly. If 5 is doing actually very well, it has more than precinct 6.
Right, so that's then sometimes some people's concern.
It's not the number that I use, and I'll probably get a new one for 2020, it's 510.
Right. Right, but what some other precincts say is that 5 has more RTMs than maybe they should based on the people that are voting. It's just, it comes up every once.
Well, it's unfortunate, and it's done off the numbers that I get. from
Right,
the
right,
state.
but 500 of those people, whether they chose to vote or not, they're not voting.
Right, but I also have people who don't vote that are in precincts.
I agree.
you know, so
I know, it's just,
and it's usually more than 500.
yeah, Liz, I think you're doing a fabulous job, but it's just, it's what everybody brings up,
Right.
questions and comments that I figured I might as well make sure we say
Just
it
get
during
off
the
credit,
meeting.
exactly. So, I guess bottom line, unless I go for the exemption, you just don't want them also conversely affected either by not being able to have enough representation just because they have the prison in their precinct.
Right, and if we didn't do something like this, then we maybe we'd be denying our prison mitigation responsibility. We don't want to do that.
I would say thanks for coming in and letting us know. We'll vote it in a minute. But for RTMs, the impact is that all RTMs are running in June for
So,
their seats, right? I'm just,
yep, and you're asking, and,
Yep.
because if we moved your line even a little bit, yes, the whole complement of RTMs for the precincts will run. 6 is not moving, so their 3rd will run. That's normally up.
okay,
The rest of them have a line change, as minuscule as it may be, the full complement will have to run. The advantage that they'll have is, as long as they stayed within their precinct, even as the line is moved, they would still be an incumbent candidate
Okay.
for reelection,
yep,
so.
okay.
An incumbent and only need to send back that they're interested as opposed to
Just a letter of
signatures.
intent, that's right, they don't need to pull nominations.
Okay, perfect. Nancy, would you make a motion?
I would love to. I'll make a motion to approve the draft precinct map, legal description, and block listing of the precincts in Walpole as presented by the town clerk, and instruct the town clerk to take all steps necessary to complete the precincting process.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Liz.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for the order of layout for street layout for Emerald Way portion and Olmsted Lane.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is that you, Carl, or Jim? Either way.
Good evening to the chair, members, Carl Bald of Town Engineer. So you have, to open the hearings for the acceptance of Emerald and Olmsted, or a portion of Emerald and Olmsted. 2 weeks ago, you voted your intention to lay these roads out. I believe notice has been given, and this is all part of the process under Chapter 82 by which we make these roads, which are created by the planning board public. So you've got an order of layout before you. You can close the hearing and vote them, provided nobody has anything to say about them. I think on the 17th, I have a memo to you dating and outlining the process. So that's what we're here to do tonight.
Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions? Is there anybody in the public that's here for the layout of the streets? Seeing nobody. Nancy?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion to adopt the order of layout for Emerald Way from its beginning at the sideline of Fisher Street at Station 0+00 ± to Station 8+78.73 ±.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Motion to sign the order of layout documents and plans for Emerald Way.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
A motion to have written layout documents and plans on file in the town clerk's office.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
A motion to adopt the order of layout from Olmsted Lane from its beginning at sideline of Emerald Way at Station 0+21.23 ± to its end at Station 4+36 ±.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
A motion to sign the order of layout documents and plans for Olmsted Lane.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
A motion of written layout documents and plans on file at the town clerk's office.
And second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
We'll sign those too, so. Nancy, did you want to sign this one?
Did I miss
I
one?
think there were two sort of stuck together. This makes for exciting TV.
Very.
Thanks.
I don't know if people know about that street, that Olmsted is the family name that had purchased the land and then sold the land, but then Emerald Way is also kind of homage to the emerald necklace of, in Boston, for the
I
Queens.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Nice.
kind of cute.
So while they're finishing up, our next item is Amy Kessel, KP Law, discussion of proposed friendly 40B project at 1015 East Street.
Kind of an introduction.
Thank you, Jim.
And Amy, feel free to come up afterwards. So a couple of weeks ago, I was approached by a company that has the Gilmore site under agreement that's located at 1015 East Street. They approached the town and explained that they understood we're in safe harbor. We've reached our goal under the housing production plan with the recent approval of the project in South Walpole. However, they would like to do a friendly 40B project, which is why I'm here tonight, asking for some guidance and direction from the board if you so deem appropriate. We could enter into negotiations with them. Initially, I was a bit concerned. Obviously, we've had a considerable amount of 40Bs over the last few years, more than I can remember in my almost 18 years here. But this is an opportunity to impact a site that will have minimal impact, I think, on the residential area. All that's really around there is the two major apartment complexes down there. There's not really any houses. It abuts train tracks. It also abuts site of CVS Plaza there, and it's an optimal site if we had to pick one specific site in town to site a 40B. Patrick and I have crunched some numbers. We believe this will get us to 10+% on our affordable housing inventory once the census comes out. We don't know for sure because the census numbers, as Liz just mentioned, have not been finalized yet. So I'm here tonight seeking some guidance. I have Amy here with us tonight. This is the first time we've even ever considered a friendly 40B. So I'd kind of like to walk the board through the process a little bit, talk to you about it, and if it's something you're interested in, I'd like to ask permission to work with the chair and vice chair of this board and the developer and town council and some of the various department heads to see what's the best possible deal we could get in place, and then we'll bring it back before the board to review and consider. And then if it's something this board wants to pursue, we can follow up with the proper documentation to the zoning board and work with the developer. So, Amy, what did I miss?
Not much.
Okay. So, do you want me to walk you through the project a little bit? The proposal on the table right now is for a 148 units apartment complex down on the Gilmore site. It's specifically on the Gilmore site, right at the bend on East Street there, going towards Elm Street. It calls for, I believe, up to 5 stories. And parking obviously is going to be a strong consideration for the site. But again, that's something that can be worked out with the details. So I'll open it up to questions, Mark, or comments, however you'd like to
Sure.
proceed.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, comments and questions. I mean, I think I'd say first, this is obviously a big deal for Walpole. I think there's going to be some concerns, and there's a lot of pros to consider here, so I think we need to kind of consider the whole scenario. I think some of the concerns that I would expect to hear from the community is congestion. What's going to happen, we get these projects keep coming, and they add to the congestion in Walpole. People talk about traffic in Walpole Center. So I'm not saying that's a concern of mine, but I do think we should address it. So when we hear that from the community, we should hear about it and talk about it. And I think we'll hear people say that we're overbuilding. So I don't mean to start with the concerns, because I'm not necessarily against or for this project, because I think there's a lot of possible benefits here too. I think this, as Jim said, is going to be in a central business district, and so that's probably the perfect place for any project like this, right? So there's a lot of benefits potentially for our local businesses. There's potentially benefits with mitigation that we can negotiate with the developer, which you'll do. So, I have a lot of ideas. So I guess one comment I'll make is you said you'd work with the chair and the vice chair, but I'd like to have a say in the process as well. So if we can meet along the way, is that doable?
I can certainly talk to you. I need to be mindful of the open meeting law, but I can talk to you.
We could talk about that and work through that.
In the past, the board's designated 2 members, Jim, work on these projects and bring the best. I'm thinking of what we worked with Pulte on East Street further down there. So, yeah.
Well, I could just work with the chair and the vice chair too, and instead of working with you directly, I could work with them, and then they can.
We just need to be mindful of the open meeting law, so.
All right. I'll make sure that I am.
Only 2 at a time.
Only 2 at a time, yeah. That's my intention anyways. So I think it's a big deal. And I think we should talk about it. Like you said, parking is going to be part of the conversation. I've been talking to some planners at the MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And so they've got some studies that we can look at that can talk about if we're going below the 2-to-1 parking ratio. This is too early to talk about any of this. But anyways, all this will be part of the conversation. And so, I think there's a lot of good that we can do here. One question I have probably for you, Jim, or maybe for Ms. Questle, is we talked about the 10% threshold, right? So if we do go forward with this local initiative project, and it does get us above 10%, what does that get the community? And I'm asking in the context of there's a number of 40B proposals in front of us right now, and that will probably be coming that we don't even know about yet, right? So when you get these 40B proposals that include affordable housing, it puts us in a position where we don't have control at the local level. And so does this put us in a position where we can take control back?
We'd be able to better dictate as to where Walpole is going as far as our housing inventory. Essentially, the 40B applications that were submitted that are date stamped, prior to receiving the decision are still in the pipeline, still needs to work its way through. But any others for the next year or two, depending on what happens with some of the other projects, are we could say thanks, but no thanks. There is a process that the zoning board has to go through, and I believe KP Law is helping Patrick and Chairman Lee with that. But it isn't, no, we can't deal with you. They have to go through a whole process. It's specifically outlined.
Sure, I understand.
But it does certainly help us and allows Walpole to dictate its future course as to where we go with housing.
So just real quick on that subject, so we have safe harbor now for 2 years, is that right?
Yeah, if all the permits are pulled and everything, and they meet the
So
time.
that, we have that, 2 years will come and go pretty quickly. What happens, what does this buy us beyond 2 years? Somebody told me that we can get a significant extension of that safe harbor well into the 2020s, or is there any, can we explain that to me?
So if I may, Amy Questle, Town Council. So there's different types of safe harbors, and so the safe harbor that the town is currently in is the housing production plan. There are 2 safe harbors with regard to meeting the goals of the housing production plan, and we're at the higher goal. So we've met the higher goal, so we have a 2-year safe harbor now. I don't want to say the best, but the strongest safe harbor to be in is the 10%, to be over the 10%. And once you're over the 10%, you are locked into that safe harbor until another census comes out.
Oh, 10 years.
So, well, yes, for now, but we can't predict what's going to happen. We also can't predict if, regulations will change, things like that. But that's typically what this 10% safe harbor will get you. And as Jim said, being in safe harbor does not mean that you automatically deny every single 40B that comes before the zoning board, because there could be some that are beneficial. There could be some that are, minimal in size, but are going to meet the needs of seniors in the community, or something that at that time is needed. So as Jim stated, there's a process the ZBA goes through. They open the hearing, and then they have 15 days to either invoke safe harbor. They can invoke safe harbor and deny on the spot, or they can invoke safe harbor, hear out the proposal, reserving their rights to deny it under safe harbor.
Okay.
So, so that's essentially where we are. But being in safe harbor, without a doubt, has you in the driver's seat with regard to housing.
Okay, that makes sense. If I could just make one more comment, so we don't have to worry about the open meeting law concerns if I just say what my interests are right now, which is that a project like this, if it does move forward, I just want it to be something that's open to the community. And this is just something that I would say to you in your office, and I'll say it here. I just want something that it's accessible. Public access is important to me. I don't, I look at some of the other projects in Walpole Center, and I see they have a really nice courtyard, but nobody can go into that courtyard unless you live there, right? So something that's more open to and accessible from the sidewalks and open to the public. Open space is always important to me. I like pedestrian flow. I think any project should keep in mind 10 to 20-year projections for other growth potential. And specifically, this Gilmore site is an abutter to the CVS pharmacy sort of parking lot, and that is a site that could be developed in 5 years, maybe sooner, maybe later. But I'd like this, whatever happens here, to be mindful that that pedestrian flow could potentially continue into that future, development that isn't even on the table yet. But I just want to be mindful of long-term planning when we're approving anything in Walpole. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thanks, Glenn. Ben?
Yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and say that this is an incredible opportunity that has fallen into our lap as it regards affordable housing. We've talked a ton over the last 3 years at this board about 40Bs, and it's been pretty much beaten into the ground. We've talked about inclusionary zoning bylaws. We've talked about master plans. We've talked about revising our zoning bylaws in other ways. And what's happened here is that, literally a developer has come to us and placed this project in our laps to consider. So it's a fantastic opportunity. There are a lot of concerns. I think Glenn made some great points. It's something that's going to have to be really well considered by this board. But at the end of the day, the process, and Ms. Questel can probably speak more on it if others have questions, but the select board can only, I guess I could say, sponsor it as a LIP project and move it forward with the developer. At that point, it goes to the ZBA, just like every other project that comes before the town that seeks relief in those ways. So the select board won't be making any decisions about how many cars are being parked. The select board won't be making any decisions about how many floors. It all goes to the ZBA in the standard course of things, just like the ZBA always handles. And I think that's an important distinction to make, that it is going to go through those avenues. So I think it's an exciting opportunity. I look forward to hearing more from the developer and seeing how it can benefit downtown Walpole.
Thanks, Ben. Jim?
Yeah, so obviously there are going to be concerns raised about the nature and size of the development and traffic, parking, all those things we've talked about. Ben's right when he says that this puts, it now needs to go before the ZBA, which means the ZBA gets to opine and set the rules and all that and work with the developer on this. So there's an advantage there. I also would like to think that the select board, though, although we don't have any real jurisdiction here, but we would certainly provide input to the ZBA, and at least I would want to do that. Because when I look at the proposal, it's a big, tall building. It's right to the edge of the street. This is all schematics and conceptual stuff, but it seems to me there's room for improvement here in terms of the aesthetics of the building, and making sure that it's not contributing to the eyesore kind of theme, and so I think it'll be important for us to have input, and as that process unfolds. The question that I have, and the one that I think is really the linchpin question here, is let's say we decided we didn't want to work with this developer and do a friendly 40B. What's the likely outcome of that decision?
I specifically asked that question, and their response to me was, we'll probably wait out the 2 years and
Do
apply.
a 40B?
Yeah.
So, knowing that, it does seem as though it's advantageous to the town to work with the developer, knowing that, you know, what the outcome is gonna be once we clear the safe harbor that we've gotten under the housing production plan. It also does get us over the 10%, which is really important, and it's comfortably over this 10%. We'll see how it actually lays down when the census results come in, but it seems as though it gets us comfortably over, and probably for a good long period of time. So I think there's some real advantages to that too. So Ben's right when he says it's a big opportunity that way. I like the idea of having more control. I always have. The 40Bs that come in always have disturbed me because we have no control. If we have the opportunity to control this, and if the developer is actually willing to work with us in a way that is going to be beneficial to the town, and you heard Glenn talking about, you know, open access and all that, I totally agree. It's those kinds of things that we really need to be, you know, having dialogue about and providing input to the ZBA. So I think all things considered, you know, as long as we do have the control, I'd rather have the control than not have the control. I think it's now incumbent upon us to exercise that control to the extent that we can, and make sure that what goes in here is something that's right for the town. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Jim. Nancy?
So looking at it initially, a few questions. How many 3 bedrooms were they talking from?
10%.
10% 3 bedrooms. And then, did they offer any off-site improvements, suggestions?
They offered, and they also, nothing specific. They said, we'll leave it up to the town to decide where the funds could best be used.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the comments out of the building that was done downtown is that we didn't have an affordable component. And I know that, you know, when we surveyed years ago the master plan, they identified downtown as the place to put affordable. So I think it is an opportunity to make sure that it is where people want it, or have said they wanted it, and more residential. You know, the restaurants all through everything, as the building's coming in, have said that they've been doing very well, and it's actually been extremely helpful. So I'm sure that's the same of all the other businesses downtown. What I do think we're gonna need to do is take advantage of learning from the other building that was down there. You know, them being so close to the street, the problems with the loading and unloading. I think we need to make sure that those issues are addressed early on, because this is a hard corner. You know, there's also the pedestrian of the transit that's there, that lighting and all that sort of stuff to really light it up back there and make sure it, you know, flows well into the parking lot that's on the other side for the commuter lot. Access for fire, that's probably very important on that tight turn, and looking at the shape of this lot. And then, you know, hearing people around town, they don't love the city look that those buildings are kind of pushing there. Like, how can we make, as you said, like the facades, go a little bit more, you know, rural, even though they're a 5-story building. So that's just kind of some of the things that I thought of right away. It is nice that it's rental, so that means all of them count towards affordability, as opposed to, you know, most of the places we have, it seems like, well, not most of them, but, you know, 100% rentals goes to 100% affordability, so that's it.
Thanks. I would just say that I agree with everything that's been said. I think that it's better to be a participant in the discussion about what's going to be and what some of the options are, and what we might get in terms of, you know, maybe pushing it off the street or whatever we decide we're interested in. The option is if we tried to negotiate something and it came back to the board and the board wasn't happy, the vote could still be a no. So there'll be a checkpoint there. And as Ben mentioned, it then does need to go to the ZBA, and it's completely up to the ZBA to work through their regular process. So we're not going to be taking anything away from the ZBA's ability to do the ZBA process. So I think that's what Ben was trying to say, is we're not trying to cut a side deal that the ZBA can't live with, doesn't want to live with, won't live with. And that's not our intent. But I think it is important that we would like to get over 10% so that we can deny future 40Bs if we don't like them. I think there's always going to be a need for affordable housing in a good project. A good project will always be a good project. And, you know, we as a town will want to take a look at some of those. But we won't have them forced upon us when we don't want a lot of development in a site that isn't necessarily good for the town. So Jim, I would say I'd be in favor of moving ahead with discussions and see where we can go with that. I think one of the important things that, you know, we did talk about is we did want to have this be a discussion at the select board level tonight so that everyone in town can become aware. You know, there are a few people who probably know, there's some rumors going around about Gilmore's. And now, you know, we know that it's true, there is a developer who would like to develop the site and would try to work with the town. So now that everybody knows, people can start thinking about the site and what would need to be done to make it a good site for Walpole. And that'll be good because they'll be able to give us feedback as we enter into this process, so.
So could I ask Amy, is there any formal vote we need from the board to start this process? I mean, obviously, we're going to come back and present everything. I plan on bringing on some experts that can give us some ideas as to what we could bring into this project to invite the community more into it, so it's just not blocked off. But do we need anything?
No, I think the general consensus is to move forward and possibly even, you know, come up with a memorandum of agreement with the developer. You know, but again, it is the ZBA's ultimate call. So, but I think that all of the comments here tonight are valid comments that I think that the developer will be somewhat receptive to. They are experienced. They've done projects very similar to what they're proposing here. So, hopefully they're expecting the comments also, so they won't be, you know, surprised by them or anything.
Thanks. So should we do this motion that we have here?
Want to read it?
Is it I'll
And just
make
for
a
clarity,
motion.
if I may? So
Sure.
there'll be a public hearing process through the ZBA process.
Oh, absolutely.
So the public input
And
will
I think
will
we're
happen.
gonna want
Yeah.
input
I'm just want to clarify
before
that.
we even propose a memorandum of
For sure.
understanding.
Yeah.
So I think the public will get a couple of chances.
Okay.
Certainly for us in our process, and then definitely through the ZBA. They'll go through all the regular
And you,
hearings and things. So.
and so then actually you just said you're okay with just our consensus?
I mean, either that or a motion to move forward with, you know, the town administrator, but it seems like everybody's.
Do you want to read the motion, Nancy?
So, a motion to authorize town council, town administrator, select board chair, and/or designee to negotiate an agreement with developer and bring it back to the select board for consideration.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine, and that's fine, because we
And
would come
so-
back probably more
Okay,
than once.
so I made that motion, and
Seconded.
then I made the motion with and/or designee because,
Thank you.
yeah, it's,
You never know.
That makes sense.
right, so,
We have a motion in a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good.
I'll report back.
Thanks.
Amy.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, have a good night.
thanks, you too.
So, next up, Chief, I see you in the back. Vote to appoint and the following candidates to a position of firefighter paramedic. Francesca Angelini, Jocelyn Jenks, Elizabeth Hunt. Please invite them in, that'd be great.
You need to put a railing at the end of that thing.
Yeah, did you see my note about the med
Yes,
flight?
yeah, but there,
No.
Do what?
he's here, so I think they're.
Rick just told me we got a med flight coming
I know.
in soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just be mindful of that if it gets loud.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Chief, you want to start us off?
Sure.
Thank you to the chair and members of the board. Tonight, I have before you three candidates to fill three positions within the fire department. The first is Francesca Angelini. Francesca is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps and has worked for the past 8 years as an EMT. She recently completed all the requirements to become a paramedic and is scheduled to take her certification exams shortly. And I'd like to introduce her and bring her up to the podium, and you can ask her any questions you may have.
That'd be great. Welcome, we've all seen your paperwork, so, if there's anything else you'd like us to know about yourself, why don't you let us know?
Basically, that this is just my passion, and felt like I was putting this earth to help others, so this is, being a part of the fire service would just be a tremendous honor.
Great. Any questions or comments?
No, I'll just say thank you for your service and welcome.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to appoint Francesca Angelini to the position of firefighter paramedic with the Walpole Fire Department.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
And welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Next is Jocelyn Jenks. Jocelyn is a Walpole resident who is currently a public safety dispatcher for the town of Wilmington and is a nationally certified paramedic for Cataldo Ambulance. Prior to receiving her paramedic certification this past June, she worked as an EMT for Cataldo Ambulance. She's also the granddaughter of one of the original firefighters to be on the Walpole Fire Department back in 1974. So, Jocelyn?
Hello, thank you for having me tonight. Like he said, I'm a resident of Walpole. My grandfather was one of the original firefighters. I've been an EMT for 6 years, recently paramedic with Cataldo. I am a public safety dispatcher currently for police and fire. It's definitely one of my passions, so especially here in Walpole, where I have the family ties.
Great. I was going to ask about the family ties,
Yes.
because I know
Yeah.
that name, so.
Yes, it's
that-
still in the department, yeah.
That's great, that's great. Any questions or comments?
No.
Nancy?
I will make a motion to appoint Jocelyn Jenks to the position of firefighter paramedic with the Walpole Fire Department.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
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 And the third candidate that I have before you is Elizabeth Hunt. Elizabeth is a personal trainer who is pursuing her paramedic certification, is in the final stages of her certification process. She's currently getting ready to do her ride time, and then she'll be able to take the exam. She's very energetic, and Elizabeth?
Welcome.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I don't think so. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about you?
Well, I don't know if you guys saw just my resume or if you saw my cover letter as well. 3 years ago, when I was working in a gym, I saw a true cardiac emergency. Somebody had a heart attack on the treadmill, and although you are supposed to be certified in CPR and AED if you work in a gym, my manager at the time had not sent me for my class yet, so I didn't know what to do. He supposedly had taken the test, but panicked when this guy had a heart attack, and the only reason that he survived, because it was an LAD, very serious heart attack, was because the fire department was a block from the gym that I worked at. So I decided after that moment that that was a horrific experience and I didn't want to be without the ability to help ever again. So right after that, I signed up for an EMT class, and within the first week I knew that's what I was supposed to be doing. That's what I was meant to do. And I've been in school ever since. I have finished all of my didactic, and I've finished all of my in-hospital clinical training. The only thing I have left to do is my ride time, and I'm set to take the paramedic exam in February.
Great, great.
Excellent, thank you. I'll make a motion to appoint Elizabeth Hunt to the position of firefighter paramedic with the Walpole Fire Department.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The last thing I would have for the board is that the academy is currently filling in March, so it'll be some time before we can get them to the academy. We'll be doing all the testing processes right away so that we can get them into the academy, and then they will wait until such time as those slots open up, and I will keep the board apprised of those openings, so.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chief.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for the chief? No. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, Chief Kelleher, talk about some traffic issues. welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight.
Good.
There's two separate issues in town that we're looking for additional signage. Neither one of these locations have signs in the rules and the traffic rules and regulations, so we'd like to come before you to have those added. So I can go each one individually if you'd like me to do that? or-
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. So the first one is in my recommendation I had sent you, it said no parking signs. There should actually be no standing, no stopping signs. The issue that we're having there is livery vehicles such as rideshare cars or things of that nature, as well as delivery vehicles such as Amazon, UPS, FedEx, are stopping in front of Union and West. And when they do that, because of the way the road curves there, they're taking up a significant portion of the western travel lane, causing vehicles traveling that direction to go across the yellow dividing line, which causes an issue coming the other way because of the sight line. The road curves fairly sharply there, and we're concerned that, you know, if this continues, we're gonna have a head-on crash there. And with the crosswalk that was installed there as well, we've received a number of complaints, people getting off the train at night, saying that the traffic is just not stopping for them. So we've tried to do the enforcement. Unfortunately, at this point, without any signage, our enforcement mechanism just really isn't there for those trucks. So we would like to have those installed there in front of the building, ideally from the first entrance into the parking lot all the way up to where the train station entrance is further up West Street before the bridge. So that would be my recommendation to solve that problem there. And of course, should those signs be installed, we would, you know, use our enforcement mechanism to.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Do you have a sense of where the delivery trucks and the library and the other ride sharing will go as a result?
So there's a lot across the street, which has a significant amount of parking in it. I was actually up there during the day a couple of different times, and there's open spots in there where they could go in and stop.
Good.
They could even go inside, go into the first entrance inside the building, make their delivery, go around the back and come out. And during the day, there's not a lot of commuter traffic coming up and down, so that would be ideal for them to be able, there's a solution to a place for them to go, essentially. I know it'll take me a few minutes longer, and our idea here is not to make anybody's life more difficult with this. It's just, we don't want to have a head-on crash or another pedestrian crash in a crosswalk there, because people can't see. So.
Great. Nancy?
I will make a motion to amend traffic rules and orders, Article 5, Section 2, by posting no stopping
Yes, please.
signs on West Street directly in front of 95 West Street.
Second.
We motion a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And secondly, we've received some requests from the neighbors in the area in East Walpole on Hemlock Street, in the area of Beach Street, to install a stop sign on the eastern side of the intersection. There is one on the western side, but the east side doesn't have one there. Even though, truthfully, that we don't have a lot of crash data there, but the neighbors are concerned, given that Hemlock Street can become a cut-through to gain access from East Street up to Plimpton Street, and then to go to 1A, that without vehicles having to stop driving that direction, we could have an issue there. And there's been reported a number of near accidents in that area. So we'd like to put a stop sign there in an attempt to slow them down and make people stop and pause and look around, and especially with that being highly residential with a lot of children living around there. Anything to slow the traffic down would be ideal to increase public safety in that area. And again, there is no sign in the regulations, so our enforcement mechanism just isn't there for that. We've had our traffic officers in that area conducting some enforcement. They reported there's a fair amount of volume, so I feel, and more importantly, the neighbors feel that a stop sign in this area would be beneficial for public safety in that area.
Great.
So that's my neck of the woods. Can I just get clarity on the east-west? So coming from Plimpton Street, there is a stop sign? Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're coming from the eastern side of that intersection, we'll be coming from East Street towards Plimpton.
Got it.
So
You can put a stop sign there right before the curve?
Exactly. So number 45 Hemlock Street is the house on the corner. That would be ideally where.
So there'll be a stop sign there, a stop sign coming from Plimpton Street,
Yes,
but
there's
not
already-
coming from, I guess, the other side of East Street. I'm sorry, there's East Street coming from two different directions, right?
So if they come up Hemlock towards Beach, there's no sign there. And if that's from the East Street side, so that's traveling west.
You got it.
There's no sign there. There is one on the other side on Hemlock. Beach Street has nothing.
Right.
But without that being there, people just kind of go through. And the intersection admittedly doesn't have a great layout. The streets aren't lined up, so when they come through, again, it's just, they make that quick turn. People don't know what you're doing. And
Yeah. So slows everybody down.
it would slow everybody down and force them to stop at the top of that hill there. It just seems to make a lot of sense. And it seems like there's never been a sign there ever, so.
Yeah. Sounds good.
having one there would be helpful, I think.
Great. Nancy?
So I did talk to Chief Betro about this, and he actually he's very much for this, because in the past it had been turned down by a different board. And he said that there's, it's much different neighborhood now with GPS, and that they're using it as a much more cut-through without even knowing where they're going. And so with that being said, they're not normal neighbors that tend to take that corner much faster. And he did also suggest some green cutting by the DPW, that there's some line of sight that I could pass on.
Sure, let me know.
All right.
Yep.
But, yeah, sounds like a great idea otherwise.
Great.
I'll make a motion to amend the traffic rules and orders for Article 8, Section 8, by adding a stop sign to the eastern section of Hemlock Street at the intersection of Beach Street.
Second?
So a motion to second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Anything else you want to pass along, or?
Nothing at this time. I believe actually Medflight's landing out on the parking lot, so,
Okay.
so I'll save you guys the email and just let you know now.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Let's see, next up, Veteran Services Committee, discussion and vote on membership increase and reassigning of member Donna Summers to the veteran from any service period. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me back with yet another ask. What we would like to do, the Veterans Committee, is seek approval for one additional position. It would be a veteran of any era, as you mentioned. If we receive this approval, we would like to transition Donna Summers into that title, as she is a Vietnam era veteran. Currently, she's a resident at large. If approved, we would then have two positions. We'd both be resident at large, both be voting members, and it would also give us an uneven voting. It would give us to 9 members instead of 8, making me the tiebreaker and uncomfortable position to be in, so that would be ideal. Yeah, so that's it.
Great. I think it's a good idea. Any other comments or questions?
No, good idea.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of the Veteran Service Committee to add one member to the committee and reassign Donna Summers as from a resident at large to a veteran, any service period member.
Second.
So a motion to second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you guys waiting for anybody else? Should we have the Article 14 discussion now, or, I know I told a couple of you probably more like 8:15, but if you're not waiting for anybody, we can get going right now. Okay, so we'll go to open forum at 8:15 if there's anybody here for that, but the time being 8 o'clock, we'll go to new business fall town meeting, Article 14. Jim?
Sure. I wanted to get out in front of some questions that have recently been posed to me, and ultimately, I believe they fall under the select board, and I wanted to make sure that the board is comfortable with, basically developed a Q&A. So if you're comfortable with it, Mark and everyone else, I'll just
Sure.
kind of run through what I'm looking at. Maybe I'm missing something. You can give me some feedback, and I can add that in. So first question relates to the Johnson Middle School. How and why was the decision made to select the combined option of the Bird Middle School in the back corner? Why wasn't Johnson Middle School considered? So the building committee considered multiple options. They were tasked with narrowing the list down to 2 or 3 preferred solutions. Ultimately, they picked the combined middle school because basically it gets us the best value. We couldn't apply for a rehab or a new building at the Johnson Middle School while still having a project with the MSBA.
Hang on just one second. Patrick, could you do me a favor and just pull that door closed? Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Multi-talented. All right, thanks, Joe.
So after looking at the options for months, along with the project manager, the building committee ultimately decided to go with the combined middle school, which would bring together the Bird Middle School children and the Johnson Middle School children. So that ultimately leads into, well, what are you going to do with the Johnson Middle School?
Let me see if, does the board have any questions about what Jim was just talking about Johnson Middle School versus Bird Middle School site, okay. Because Ben is on the school building committee as well, so we can ask Ben for any feedback, and we have several members of the school building committee in the audience that we can go to, so, okay, thanks, Jim.
Okay, so leading into Johnson, what's gonna happen with that building if the override passes come the 2nd of November? Your board hasn't discussed this matter. Myself and the school superintendent and some of our department heads have talked about it, and there's been ideas kicked around, such as using it, some of the space as a recreation center. I know Brendan could certainly use it, especially the gym space and maybe the art space for some classes. There's definitely demand. We've kicked around the idea of also placing a preschool in that building. It's certainly a big space. This would actually address two problems that Bridget and I foresee coming, which is to the Elm Street School could quickly fill up with some of these projects that we've talked about even tonight. That would free up the Feeney Middle School, Feeney Preschool. We could move the preschool children over to Johnson. Obviously, there would be some work involved there, but that would free up the classrooms at Elm to handle the 1st through 5th graders in the kindergarten classes there. There's been talk about using it as a tech school, potentially selling the building to a developer or working with a developer to create some affordable housing, leasing the building to an interested party, assisting the food pantry with some of their identified spacing needs, or just simply take the building down and sell the land. So those are the almost half dozen ideas that we've kicked around here. Does the board see any other ideas you'd like to consider? Ultimately, I think the board should task me with forming some type of group to identify these, explore them in detail, maybe do some studies of the building. I dug up the McGuire report from 2013 last week, and they did a great job identifying the deficiencies of that building and identifying some of our options and rehab costs at the time. I'll give you some perspective. The cost have shot up, as you might expect. At the time, they said, build yourself a new middle school, it's going to cost $58 million. We're basically double that right now. So their quote of, I think it was about 150 to 200 to rehab that school and make it usable is probably double, triple, or quadruple at this point. So that's my thoughts on the future use of Johnson Middle School. What does the board foresee? Do you agree with some of these ideas we've kicked around? Do you agree with let's wait until after the 2nd, see what happens, and then shortly after that, get it on one of the upcoming agendas?
Let me jump in real quick. I think the important thing is that we will want to appoint a board to go take a look at those issues, and we'll need a little money to bring in, engineers and architects to think about those things. I think that's the right time to do it after the November 2nd vote, because while the school building committee is gearing up for design of the building, detailed design and all those things, we can start in earnest the Johnson Middle School Reuse Committee. So that's my point of view, that is the right time to do it. So let me go to the rest of the board and see if there's questions and comments.
No, and I think everybody on this board is well aware of Johnson Middle School and how close it is in proximity to a couple of our key wells, and as a recharge area for our water supply. So that wasn't mentioned in here. Jim knows it, everybody here knows it. But all these ideas, some of them are good, some of them are better than others, but they all have to be considered within the context of how they impact our water supply. So that's a conversation that can be more detailed than what I've just explained, but I just wanted to throw that in there, that context is important to any consideration for reuse of that site.
Thanks, Len.
Sure.
Ben?
I know I genuinely agree with what you said, Mark, as far as wanting to address it, but I think all of these are great ideas that deserve additional exploration.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, and I agree. These are all ideas that are, worthy of exploration. I would piggyback on what you said, Glenn. The fact that it's near the wells, the way it is, also limits the use that can be, gotten out of that. So that's another consideration. But, clearly we have to figure something out, but it's premature until after the vote happens. And if the vote, is to approve the new middle school, then of course we'll go look at this. And the right way to do it is to form a group, a committee, to go and explore all the options and then take whatever action comes out of that. But, I think this is a great starting list. There may be some other ideas we come up with, who knows, but this is a great starting list. So I'm in favor of, the direction that you're steering us in, Jim.
Okay.
Nancy?
So for me, I think, I agree, I think we should wait till we figure out the vote instead of getting people together and starting moving forward, that we need to, like, yeah. But having been there for the McGuire report when it was done, and Glenn's point to water, I would also think before we actually put that committee together, I would like as a board, us to look at hiring professionals to update the McGuire report and put a water component into it, and for them to evaluate what is going on at Johnson Middle School, so that when we do form a committee, they have that information, as opposed to just sitting around and thinking, what are some just great needs? That they have that information to go from.
I agree, Nancy. I think we need professionals to help guide us
Yeah.
in that regard, so.
Thank you. So,
Okay, so going down that path, I understand what the board's
Yep,
saying.
yeah, no, you're on the right path.
Okay, next up is financing. I've been asked multiple times about how's the town financing this project, and why are you borrowing for 30 years opposed to 20 or 25 years? This board talked about this back in June 2021, just 3 or 4 months ago. Ultimately, your board decided to go with a 30-year borrowing. The reasons behind some of the borrowing, I took a look at your minutes. It allows the tax impact each year to be lower and thus more manageable for the taxpayers. The current middle schools were built in the 60s. It's expected that the new middle school have a long, useful life of 50-plus years. The tax burden associated with the new building will be spread out between current and future Walpole residents. Under the low interest rate environment, stretching out the debt service schedule provides relief to the current taxpayers, enables future taxpayers who will enjoy the asset to share in the cost, and to basically spread it out. Furthermore, our financial advisors have just suggested that municipalities model their options in this context, using potential debt and future debt and leveraging them off just a little bit. Just to give you some perspective, we do have some projects that are falling off the books. In FY26, we have the Elm Street and Boyden renovations falling off. The library's falling off in FY30, and the high school renovation is falling off in FY25. So altogether, roughly, those come to about $115 each year falling off the tax bill. So if you look at it, that the average household is going to have to pay an extra $439 a year in taxes if this override were to pass. If you take off the $115, that's a net of $324 a year. So some things to consider. And further, we expect that the borrowing will be spread out a bit with this project. We'll probably borrow in multiple stages for this. We're not going to go out and borrow it all at once, because quite honestly, we won't have the bids probably for about a year and a half. We will need some startup money, probably about $20 million to get the construction design completely done, bid specs ready to go. So I'm guessing we'll probably borrow maybe about $20 million in the first phase, 40 or 50 million in the second phase, and then the final phase will be a much smaller amount, but we also have to account for the 5% reimbursables that the MSBA won't pay us back until 2026. So there's multiple factors here, but that's one of the reasons why we decided to spread the big chunk of change out over 30 years. We're allowed to do it under the law, and it keeps it relatively low for the average taxpayer. Any questions on that one before I move on?
Those were all the reasons we cited back in June.
I could repeat all your
I
reasons.
just want to
but you got it.
reiterate
Yeah.
this because,
So,
again,
I mean, I think it made sense then, it makes sense now, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have been asked about what's the commercial and residential breakdown. You know, how much are the residential folks being asked to pay for it versus the commercial tax base? We ran some numbers. Approximately 83.64% of our taxes are made up from Walpole residents who live here, have a house here. That accounts for about $65 million. Commercial, industrial, and personal property make up about 16%, which is about $12.7 million. So residents, about $65 million, commercial, about $12.7 million. What are some of my other questions here? I talked about the phases. The building committee, I've been asked about the building committee. What role does the permanent building committee play in this whole process? I can hear the helicopter now. The permanent building committee, basically, they're vital in this whole process. They are still an active board, despite that this is our only project ongoing. They, on April 2019, the building committee got together, they took a vote, designated 3 of their members, there was only 4 members at the time, to participate in the process and serve on the 15-member committee. So they're playing a vital role in it, and they continue to be active, all 3 of the members there. We talked about green elements. We are going for the LEED Silver designation. We're looking to use, be 20% more energy efficient than the Mass Building Code. We're just basically looking to maximize our operating efficiency with this building as much as possible. All of you know that the town was recently designated a green community. We're going for a streetlight replacement program for an $800,000 request that is going to be considerably less. I don't have final numbers on that one, but Eversource is really pitching in, and that number I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with. But that's going to save us money in the long term on our energy bills each year in the highway and streetlight budget. So I think that's pretty much it. We talked about the McGuire report. Oh, the one last item. How does Walpole's cost per square foot stack up with other projects that are being considered? Back in September, the estimated cost per square foot was $571. Brian Jarvis, who's serving as our project manager through Compass Project Management, put together a chart. Right now, the average on the MSBA approved projects is about $630 per square foot. So we're saving close to $60 per square foot on our cost for construction on this one. So they really sharpened their pencils and did the best they could as far as getting the best value for this building and optimizing what we need for the Walpole School Department and the kids here in town for years and years to come. So, am I missing anything? Do you think I should add some questions in there, provide some answers, or?
Anybody have any comments? Nancy?
I have a question. So the school building committee and then the permanent building committee, but the school building committee is going to get it through the application process and the bid process, but then when it actually starts going through the permanent building process, it goes back to the permanent building committee?
So the Mass, and Brian helped me out here possibly, the MSBA requires that there's a school building committee in place.
Right.
That committee can be smaller or it can be quite large. Ours is very large, and I think the reason we decided to go with a large group was to create a lot of diversity in there and get a lot of not only educators, but residents, people with backgrounds in building. And that was the intent from the outset, make sure we design and program this building appropriately. Once this, if we get past this and we get accepted into the program come December or whenever they have their vote, it's ultimately going to be up to you. I know some residents have questioned where is the permanent building in this. They're very much involved in the process. And Council's assured us, she's actually recently provided a legal opinion that the way Walpole is doing this, to set up this building committee, is the appropriate way to do it.
Right, which I thought it was just to get us accepted and get us going on. I mean, I thought that's what
I think the intent was the school building committee would take us all the way. And that's why the state asked for such a diverse group of people involved in the committee that can carry it all the way through. Brian can sort of tell us what maybe other towns do. And
good evening, Brian Jarvis, Project Director for Compass Project Management. So the MSBA has a roster form that I believe the town filled out in putting together the school building committee. And they're actually looking for a bunch of different credentials. School project, they want superintendent, they want someone that knows the program, they typically have the principal of the school, they typically have folks that are experienced with construction, they typically have someone from finance, they typically have members at large from other committees on town. So depending on how the town wants to meet that roster, the town has the ability to update that roster with whomever they feel is qualified to serve on the committee. This MSBA doesn't dictate that you have to go back to a permanent committee or you have to maintain a school building committee all the way through. They recommend that you maintain the school building committee all the way through for that diversity. And then in case in Walpole where you actually have members of your permanent building committee on that larger one, that satisfies all the MSBA's requirements. Most towns do have a larger building committee of this size for these types of projects.
So is this special because we're using that process?
This is the building committee as recommended and required by the MSBA, correct, for the MSBA
Right,
process.
so that's because, that is
Yes.
why we have done this as opposed to the permanent building committee.
Correct. And then the other,
So if we weren't taking any, if we weren't participating in this project,
You wouldn't have a need to form the school building committee.
Then we would just have the permanent building committee.
Correct.
And so it is then, because none of our other schools have been obviously done this way because it didn't exist back then.
Correct.
And so if we, just trying to think, so what is the percentage of towns that go, because I get why we put this whole committee together and the buy-in and we wanted all of that. I have to say that I hadn't really, I guess I didn't think to the next stage. I thought it was to get us accepted. And then I just assumed we would do what we normally do. But it also makes sense to have all the educators, which even when we do a permanent building committee project, somebody from the superintendent's office or something would have already been part of that committee, because that's what.
In the past, we've had the chiefs for each
Right.
of their buildings, Sal.
Exactly, like all of that, that's what we've done through all of these buildings. And as far as Mass General Law goes, it's supposed to go through the permanent building committee.
No,
For-
that's not true.
For this specific project, and they've said you should use the school building committee process, which we decided to go with a very large school building committee.
Right, so for this, so the reason that it is not strictly through the permanent building committee process, like all of our other buildings have been, is because we have entered into an agreement with the Mass School Building Committee.
Yeah, part of the first step in the eligibility period of this process before they even bring on the OPM is to establish your school building committee.
Right.
And this was the committee that was established
And
for the
so,
MSBA's process.
and that is the reason that we're not doing what we have done in the past.
Correct.
Okay. And so, with that being said, and we did go with a very large committee, what do other towns do when it gets to this point? Do they keep this same committee all the way through?
In my personal experience, they've kept the committee all the way through. So I'm finishing up Natick Middle School right now. They've had this, obviously people come and go possibly from positions or
Right.
leave town for whatever reason. They substitute those to fill those requirements.
Yes.
They've also contracted a committee if it's a community member and it's not a required seat, so to speak. They can also contract the number of committees members. But in my experience and most of our experience, they've maintained the committee that started all the way through, because you do have some decision points. Different documents are signed, not necessarily by the chairman of the building committee, signed by the superintendent or executive officer, all the way through the process dealing with the MSBA. So most of them keep it from a efficiency perspective and from that diversity perspective.
And when doing a school, what would you say the percentage of that you have dealt with only has permanent building committee and not a committee like this?
The only school that I've been involved with the permanent building committee was Norwood High School 10 years ago.
Okay.
Norwood is now doing Coakley Middle School, and they have a school building committee which is much larger than their permanent building committee.
All right. And as you said, town council got an opinion that this is the way we should be doing this?
Yeah, and the permanent building committee elected their own members.
No, I totally, I understand that. I'm not questioning that. The questions have been asked that I wanted to answer them and maybe hopefully show the difference in why we're doing it. And like I said, I agreed. I didn't think past us getting accepted if it was gonna change or not. So I didn't look to see what the rules were, but as far as because it is in that we signed an agreement to go through that process, I can see that. So I just kind of wanted other people to be able to understand that. Is that okay?
Yep,
All
thanks,
right.
Nancy. Any other questions?
No.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments? No? Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
So, Mark, just to follow up, the packets for town meeting members, they're going out tomorrow to be distributed. A lot of these questions that I've raised here are addressed as part of the PowerPoint presentation that's being included in the packet. We tried to keep it as concise, but we're also going to be having that public outreach session next Tuesday night at the Byrd Middle School at 7 p.m. where myself, Brian, Superintendent Goff, members of the building committee will all be there to address any questions. We have a presentation that we're going to run through and explain all of this. So they'll be able to hash out their questions there, and of course, the town meeting on the 23rd.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate the 3 dates. The one you mentioned, next Tuesday, 10/19, 7 PM at Bird Middle School. RTMs have been specifically invited, but the public is welcome. It'll be the last of 6, maybe, public outreach sessions that have happened. It's a great opportunity for RTMs and the public to get any new questions, especially out there. Town meeting is on October 23rd, which is a Saturday. Encourage all town meeting members to get up to speed as best they can. I know they're going to be receiving their packets in their mailbox today or tomorrow, very soon, which will be great. And then especially important for all residents to realize that we're having an election on this matter only on on Tuesday, November 2nd. So I know some people have asked, after town meeting, is there anything else? Well, there is an election. People should be prepared to go and vote. The week before the election, people can vote at town hall, go to the town clerk's website. They'll give you a list of every day that's available. You can literally come in and vote. You can also do an absentee ballot by reaching out to the town clerk's office and asking it to be sent to you. So, and there's a web page on the town website on the middle school project. So there's lots of information available for anybody who would like to dig in and look at all the details. Since we have members of the school building committee here, is there anything that you think we missed? We were trying to address the issues that are really under the bailiwick of the select board. Did we miss anything? Jen?
I would just
Could you just come up to the microphone just for the people at home? Thank you.
In my experience walking around, obviously the number one question we get is the money. I think it's great that we're having this discussion about the debt schedule. I think it's kind of a tough topic to kind of, explore in words. So I'm just thinking maybe a chart showing, the money that you described going down, just breaking it down so that everybody can say. I mean, when I talk to people, I've been talking about the fact that we used a conservative estimate going into this. I've also talked a little bit about the fact that the borrowing rate was an estimate. So people understand the idea that we were floating a number out there that was, kind of the high, but now we're talking about 113-ish in savings. And I just think that really might change some people. Some people are on the fence. It's an expensive project. So I like the idea of talking about this and just suggest making it as user-friendly as possible.
I believe one of the slides that are in the packet addresses this also, yeah.
So
Excellent.
Yeah,
I was
Yes,
actually going to
please.
suggest, maybe we could put this on the town website.
yeah, I can.
You know what
yeah,
I mean? Because that
can-
way, because I think this is, the little question answer kind of thing is really nice and easy to read. And that way people can kind of go to it and then see it, and then if they have questions beforehand, maybe address them.
Sure.
And that way it also won't like tie up town meeting because people will have already had the chance.
I'm assuming you're going to put the slideshow up there as well, after next Tuesday, maybe.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because then I just
Yeah, the
think,
more info, the better.
right.
I'm just thinking, as you're talking through it, Nancy, what I could do is, they've already put together the packets, they're getting delivered tomorrow, but I could make a version of what you have in front of you available on next Tuesday night. Like at the back of the room, so people can just pick it up.
Okay, yeah,
And
just
I'll
as
put it on
long
the
as they
website.
have it. And, I mean, and I don't even know if you wanted to do something that, through the town website, if somebody had a question to ask now, that they could just send it, and that way there's no surprises, and we can answer them,
Okay.
you know?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, or should we move on?
I don't, but I know that they were looking for a motion to approve request, a motion to authorize the use of the construction management at risk alternative delivery method with respect to construction of the new middle school building pursuant to the provisions of General Law, Chapter 149A.
Thanks, and just for the public, I'll second that, but I just want to make a comment. We've been talking about that as a done deal for months. And I guess now we actually need to vote it so that can be turned in to the state.
And in fact, the school building committee voted to go this route on May 4th of this year. So this is just more of a follow-up to that. Council's advice, we need a formal vote as the executive board here, so.
Okay. So we're going to finish the vote and then we'll go to you, Nancy. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nancy?
Just wanted to say, in answer to Nancy McKenzie's question, there is already an email that says middle school project at walpole.k12.ma.us that's been accepting questions all along, but just wanted to advertise it again.
Okay, that would be, yeah, I think that's great. And is it on our, through the school department's page or through our page, or?
I know it's on the school building committee page. So, yeah, maybe we just need to advertise it on the town site as well.
Yeah, 'cause
Any
I
questions?
mean, there's just, I think, plenty of, especially elderly people or something like that, they go just to the town page. They don't necessarily go try to find the links to the school side, you know?
No,
Good.
good
Perfect.
point.
Awesome.
With the time being after 8:15, is there anybody here for open forum? Bill, come on up. You know the rule, 2 minutes. You know that we generally, all right, 2 to 3 minutes.
I'll be quick, I can do it in 2.
And you know the rule, just for the public at home, we generally can't respond because the item's not on the agenda, but feel free to
Okay.
let us know what you think.
Well, I was disappointed at the redistricting. As you know, there'd be a redistricting war next year in June because all the RTM's gonna be up. And we glossed over the voter-rich environment of Walpole Prison, the SHU, and the pre-release center. Now, the pre-release center are mobile. They can go to the Blackburn Hall. They would probably want to ride. So if it's an opportunity to get voters, there may be RTMs locked in this war next June that will want to provide them with a ride. So we need to know, are there eligible voters in the pre-release center? I understand the laws may have changed, but if you paid back your debt to society, even though you're a convicted felon, you can get the right to vote back again. Now, if there are people there might be RTMs, like myself, that would go after getting people who would want to vote but need a ride to the Blackburn Hall and give them a ride. Or to go into Walpole Prison, which is a little more difficult, and try to get some mail-in votes if there are people in there who have paid back society. But what we need to know is how many people in Walpole Prison, the SHU, and the pre-release center are actually eligible to vote. And it would be nice to know that. And some people might even campaign for it.
So just, I will respond a little because it's outside of our purview. Those are great questions for the town clerk's office. Just because we don't have anything to do with that, we don't have that kind of data. But Liz Gaffey and her department should be able to answer those questions.
I would also suggest probably the DOC would probably have a
Yeah,
lot of information too, because I don't believe they give Liz a lot of information. You know what I mean, as far as eligibility or anything like that, that I would think that would be where you would start.
Yeah, so now the other thing is, I remember when the former town clerk, Ted Hagler, they wanted him to go up to Walpole Prison and have a voting booth. That was years and years ago.
Yeah, that was 3 town clerks ago, so maybe 4.
Okay.
It's a great question for the town clerk.
Yeah, so, you know, when you have the redistricting wars, that's important information.
Okay, thank you. Next up in the agenda, stadium event parking lot license requests. Jim or Aoife, whoever would like to run us through that.
Yeah, right here. So I know the building commissioner's here. Right now, we have 3 requests in front of you, 33 Water Street, 1896 Washington Street, and 54 Water Street. And you have the space recommendations and the plans outlined that the building department has reviewed. Do we have the person who's having an issue?
Yeah, so 33 Water Street is present.
Okay.
He is disputing the
Let's do that one first.
recommendation.
Come on up to the microphone.
So, board, this is the first time we've had this type of situation, so kind of bear with us. The thought process on this is the building department has reviewed and made their recommendations to the board. There is no real appeal process, so I said, let's try it this way, that the applicant can come before you and kind of plead his case and explain why he believes he should be able to park the number of cars there.
Okay, I think that'll work.
Hi, Barry Hanson, 33 Water Street. So yeah, I've applied for the permit now twice. You have the second application, I presume, in front of you. Strictly mathematically speaking, the surface area on my front lot can hold 6 different cars. 1,097 square feet of my front lot is completely unobstructed space. So that removes things like shrubs, garden beds, etc. Dividing that by the space required in the regulation, 6.6 spaces, rounding that down to full vehicles is 6. That was the amount of spaces in my initial application. I provided a diagram at that time displaying how each could fit. No blocking of vehicles was present in the site plan, nor did it require vehicles to back out into the street at the conclusion of the event, which are 2 major requirements of the new regulations. The application was denied on the basis that one space would abut the power meter that is affixed to the side of my house. I have conceded this point and removed that space, even though I believe a vehicle hitting any portion of the house is equally concerning, and all the current permits that have been issued have vehicles parked the same distance from the home as mine. A second concern raised was that people are not allowed to back into my property to park. I have asked to be directed to the specific language in the regulations where it states that they cannot back into the spot. As it's done throughout the town in parallel parking spots, it is very common on game day to see people U-turning and K-turning on Water Street because they either don't want to reach Route 1 or they've accidentally turned off of Route 1. Routinely, people doing that need to pull their vehicle onto my property or onto the property across the street in order to do so. So I resubmitted my application, the one you currently have in front of you. The space nearest the power meter has been removed, lowering it to 5 total vehicles. 2 of those 5 vehicles being my personal vehicles that are there at all times. I provided another diagram showing a process of parking the cars without them ever needing to reverse on the public street. And I still maintain that that's not a requirement in the regulation. And the recommendation in front of you states to allow only 3 vehicles. Again, 2 of those being my personal vehicles, so I'm allowed a single visitor on game days. That recommendation leaves 55% of the surface area of my lot empty. So more than half of it. And even though I've provided additional information, reconfigured to maximize the safety of the lot, I've asked on 2 different occasions for more insight into the reasons that the limited site plan was not accepting the proposal as I submitted, and simply Mr. Crowley has responded with, fire and police are part of the process and they are not comfortable with the plan. The regulations don't specify anything about comfort as a reason for denial. It says in order to preserve safety, site circulation, conservation, and community impact. I don't believe I have done anything to prevent any of those things, and I'm still prepared to make changes if I need to get this lot as I proposed it, but I can't do so if I don't know what's wrong with it, which has not been, again, provided to me. My current proposal doesn't block any line of sights. It's a perfectly straight stretch of road right there. There's no bend, anything like that. It's not onto the street in any way. It doesn't block any egress from my home. It doesn't require backing on public streets, and it doesn't disrupt the traffic flow. Ultimately, I'm just trying to get the 5 spaces to cover the expense of picking up the litter every day, of replanting the grass because everyone walks across my property to get to the stadium. That side of the street doesn't have a sidewalk. And you have across the street from me approved 26, 29, 22 spaces, each of those with an average of 3 people in the car. I have hundreds of people crossing the street there with no crosswalk, walking onto my property, walking down the lawn. And this is in direct view of a Walpole police officer that stands there every day at 32 Water Street on game days and doesn't prevent any of the things that are causing safety issues in that area. So ultimately, what I'm here to ask for is for you to overrule the recommendation of the limited site plan and approve 5 spaces instead of 3.
Let me open it up to any questions or comments.
I think you spoke well. I'd like to hear what some of the other board members say, and I'd like to hear from Michael Yanovich about possible safety issues or what his concerns are, really.
Mike, you want to weigh in?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mike Yanovich, Building Commissioner. I can understand the applicant's frustration here. It's a tight lot. The lot is right on the street. And no, not everything is included in the rules and regulations. It's not practical to include everything that we look at when we do a site visit in the rules and regulations, such as slope, retaining walls. This particular lot has a small retaining wall. It has a mailbox that's there. It has an entrance. It has a meter. And those are all things that we look at. Most of the other, I would say 99% of the other lots we've looked at are all larger lots with more space for parking. Unfortunately, this lot, again, the cards were dealt, and this is what he has there. So, yeah, the dimensions, when you look at them, you say 1,000 some odd square feet for parking, but in practicality, you can have 1,000 more square feet added to that, and if it doesn't make sense for people to back down Water Street to get into the spot, it doesn't matter if they're backing out into the street after the game, they still have to back into the spots on Water Street. And then once they're in the spots, the location and the proximity to Water Street is what concerned the other departments. So we went out there, measured the spaces, made the decision, and we've spoken to the applicant multiple times to explain the issues. And again, I understand his frustration, but this is a very tight lot, and the other departments, as well as the building department, had concerns over letting more vehicles. I actually have just, I only have one, but you can see if I may.
Sure.
Pass it down. That's an aerial view looking down, and the area of parking is in the front. That's proposed.
And so he wanted to do 2 here and then 2 here?
Right, correct.
He wanted to do 1, 2, 1, 2,
Correct.
because this is his already driveway. And what about the, what about the backyard? Is that too wet?
So there's a retaining wall in the back, and that's what we first talked about, but I believe there's a retaining wall at the end of the driveway, just shortly behind the driveway.
That's correct, that's also wetlands.
And it's wetlands.
So, but people will be able to pull in and also pull out? There's no backing out onto the street?
So the way that it's proposed, and I'm not sure if you received it in your packet, and the applicant did provide an explanation for us of how he would get vehicles in. I have that right here. It involves stopping on Water Street, we start down here with this, and then backing into the spots. This is also a condominium situation, which concerns us. The owner did provide a deed. At any time we have a condominium association, we don't enforce private agreements, but we do inquire about ownership. He did provide a deed, but it's still not 100% clear to us what's allowed and what's not.
So are there 2 residents in this parcel?
Correct.
In this one building?
Correct, it's a two-family.
It's a 2-family, and you are the owner of record of the, or it's condo-wise, so
Condos.
there's 2 owners?
So it's 2 owners.
It's Unit A and B.
This is only drawn for Unit B. There's nothing on this diagram that depicts Unit A.
Right, but so what is the frontage of Unit A and the frontage of Unit B?
They are equal each.
They're shared.
50%.
So, did you both sign the application? I'm sorry if I'm jumping
No, go
ahead,
ahead.
I'm just, did you both petition the application?
We did not, because the deed specifies that it's dedicated use for each half of that frontage. We have separate driveways, we have separate rights to the land that I'd be parking on.
So the proposal, though, that you're suggesting does run the cars in front of the other half? Yes or no?
So on the end of this diagram is the center line of the property.
Okay,
So you would pull off onto my lawn and then reverse into, which is no different than driving into anyone else's driveway. It's the same amount of time.
I have another here.
like this.
So this is half of the
Right,
structure.
okay, so we've got
And
this.
that line is what the applicant is stating is the center line of the.
And so this is the 4 cars that you then went down to?
So I have proposed here 5 cars, 4 that are backing into their space, but backing from my property into their space.
And 2 of them are your cars?
Correct.
And so the one that was in front that you didn't like was the one that had the gas or electric meter?
I believe that was the one, correct. But it was also, the green overhang there is also the entrance, that we don't allow people to block the entrance.
Block the entrance.
It's just a little clearer, but that's a parking spot.
Yeah.
A proposed parking spot.
Yeah, but that's the one that I think you conceded on is the 5th one?
No, this is the second application. I could fit 6 spaces here, so these were all, each parking spot was actually touching the next at the regulated 9 feet, which allowed one more to park in this direction, right there, and that's where the power meter is on this corner. There's no longer a car parking up to it. It's
Okay.
now turned horizontal. And I just want to be clear that I've redone this so it does not require backing on the street, which it seems to be the part that was the most concern. You can immediately pull off onto my property and then reverse on the lawn.
And where you say boat storage, is that,
There is a boat parked there right now.
Cars would be blocking other cars? Oh,
no?
in order to back up, no?
No.
The boat would be blocked, but that's currently blocked.
There'll just be two here, and one here. So
That
these
won't be
can pull
moving
straight
during
out.
a game.
No, absolutely.
I don't think anybody's arriving in a boat.
That's
Yeah,
what the 3, but
anyway.
with the 6.
No, but 6 is not an issue.
Okay.
Is 4 a reasonable compromise?
4 would be a reasonable compromise for me. You know, again, we would stress if 4 was approved, that the owner is required to be available anyway. The concern is backing back down Water Street, but if the space in front of the entry were removed, and then
Park
could
there,
pull in
back
and then
in,
pull back
right
into the
off of
spot.
that.
Correct.
Would 4 be acceptable?
It would, but I don't think my diagrams are being understood. They go in order, so the first car I would park would pull into that vacant space and back up. The second car would do the exact same thing, and the third car could pull into that space. There's no advantage to any of the vehicles to removing that, because as long as it is not parked first, it doesn't block
Right.
the vehicle.
Right, and I think, and I don't want to speak for any of the board members, but I'm not super concerned with how you're describing backing in from Water Street. I understand what you're saying there. It's the fact that there's a car blocking the entryway permanently, and I know that, I believe what Mike just said was that somebody has to be home all the time during this. That's one of the requirements. But as Jim,
Where's
if I'm
the
not,
entryway blocked? I don't know.
the green is the entryway, right? That's
No,
the
the green
fifth.
is a shrub, it's 6 feet in each direction.
That's not your front entry.
That green diagram is the shrub that's on that corner of the property.
Okay.
Which, in the first application, you cited that there was a gas line there, and I don't quite understand why that's a relevant.
That's his entranceway, but that's the shrub that's taking it up.
So
So the doors,
This door.
So it's kind of, it's
it's
still
in
the front
between the
door.
shrubs?
So,
Front
so
door's
that's
here.
and that is a entry to
Pops
the
out
other
that way.
property, and my door is over.
And
at
this is the halfway mark, right?
Yeah, for here.
Yeah.
Right, but the other car is gonna be
So,
parked.
I mean, if there's a
Right
boat here
down the edge
now,
of
you
the
could
edge of
probably
that tree,
find this car
to the edge of
there.
that house there.
So it won't obstruct that door. It'll,
So it won't-
the
it
back,
won't-
the
it'll
back
be-
of that
It'll
car.
in fact be 6 feet away from the house, and it will be back behind the direct line into that door.
Well, that's what I mean, yeah, so it's like level with the shrub,
Exactly.
so to speak, yeah.
If
I
they
mean,
want-
I understand that others had issue with it, or maybe public safety, but I don't see what that is just from looking at this and talking about it.
You guys want to see
No,
this?
that's fine.
I've seen enough,
I
yeah.
drove down there and looked at it, so I don't personally have any other questions about it.
Well, then we sort of cut you off there.
I'm okay.
You're okay. Jim?
You know, I kind of think that 4 is a reasonable
My
compromise,
only
in all
concern
truth.
with 4, and I guess you guys have the power to change this, is that the way it's written in the regulation states that I have to park exactly to the plan. And so I don't know if you approve 4, where do I park those cars to meet the safety requirement?
So I think it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4.
And if that's what you would like to approve, then I accept that. I don't understand it, I'll say that.
So the thing is, for next year, I mean, your driveway looks big enough that if you didn't have a boat there,
Unfortunately, because of the rules that you can't block any vehicle, and because the driveway is 16 feet and I need 18 to have the legal spots, there's no additional configuration I can put there.
right, but if you did get rid of a boat, there would at least be one, right?
Couldn't
If I'm
park,
allowed to block my own personal
he couldn't
vehicle.
park in the, so that's something that we can talk about, is blocking the personal vehicle that won't move.
Right, which would be, if that's your personal vehicle.
Right.
As I understood it, the spaces include my personal vehicle though.
Correct.
And so that's where I disagree with the recommendation of 3. I think that's not fair when I already parked 2.
Well, I'll tell you the truth, I mean, I'm very much in favor of what we're doing in terms of allowing parking, for all the reasons we've talked about ad nauseum here, we don't need to restate them, so I'm a supporter of the thought process. My concern, of course, has to also be safety. And I do worry about blocking the front door, you know, even if you sit at 6 feet, it's still pretty close. Plus, just now having all the cars that you've got, very little, you know, wiggle room. I'd be afraid of cars backing into, you know, this car backing into those cars and so forth, because this is the property line, right? Your property line.
Yes.
So you wouldn't be driving across your condo, you know, mate's lawn here. You'd be having to back this car up to get off.
I understand what you're saying, but I really equate that to a parallel parking spot, which doesn't require any more distance in the front or back of that spot.
I get what you're saying, and I am sympathetic to it. But I also want to be cognizant of what the police and fire chief have said and what our building commissioner is saying.
And I understand, I wish they
Yeah.
would share what they
And
said.
I want to add that for them also, this is new for us. And so nothing, the part of them being rules and regs is we are going to adjust them. But we can't find fault until we've gone through a season or two. So just because we're saying this now for this season, it could change for the next season. And honestly, to me, right away, something that I think that we should be addressing is if there are other shared lots that are in a condo situation, right away, I'm thinking that there should be dual applications, dual signatures on them. That's my recommendation or thought for next year's process, just because we're not in the condo business and that sort of stuff. So, you know, I wish we could offer you more, but it would not be good for any of us to really go against their recommendation. I understand that you don't understand what there is, but sometimes when they're giving their professional opinion, it's based on years of their experience and training, and it's not necessarily a sentence that they can point out. But that's their experience and why we need them to give us that input.
Could I suggest that we agree on 4, see how it goes, and revisit it next year? Is that reasonable?
If I may make the suggestion, I don't know if the boat needs to stay there, but I'm willing to put on a plan the 4 vehicles, and then where the boat is currently, personal vehicle. So that way there, his personal vehicle will not count towards
There
the
you go.
4.
There you go,
So you put
perfect.
the personal vehicle there, and now you,
I make that motion.
yeah, let's do that.
Can we restate that motion? For those who weren't paying attention.
For 4, but
4 plus 1 personal vehicle
And
in the
boat.
rear of the parking lot,
When the boat is
rear
gone.
of the driveway.
yes,
When the boat's gone, and
when
understanding.
the space is available.
And understanding that the car would then be blocked in. Okay. I'm good with that.
I'd be good with that.
That's my motion.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'd just add, thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
And being prepared with this. I mean, it's great. So
That's
I
a good
just- I know,
presentation.
It's really appreciated.
Yeah, I agree with Glenn. You did a great job, and I apologize that we're new to this and that it's a learning curve for all of us. And, you know, thanks.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
And I lost my motions.
So how about the other two?
All right, I'll make a motion to approve stadium event parking lot licenses at 1896 Washington Street with 15 spaces and 54 Water Street with 63 spaces.
Second?
So you have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I will make a motion to approve the request of Michelle Felony to hold a block party on October 30th with live entertainment from 4 to 7 on Clapp Street.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I make a motion to approve the request of Michael McGuire to hold a block party on October 16th from 2 PM to 6 PM on Bubbling Brook Road.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
A motion to approve the request of Megan Texera to use Adams Farm on October 16th from 3 to 5 to host a Halloween party.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
A motion to approve the request of Norfolk County Agricultural High School to use the old Fisher Ball Field on October 22nd, 23rd, 29th, 30th, and 2021 for parking during their annual haunted hay rides.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. And a motion to accept with gratitude the following donations: multiple donors to the Walpole Cultural Council, multiple donors to Recreation Smiling Eyes Financial Assistant, the Galligan family in honor of Armando and Francis Palmieri to the Veterans Gift Account in the amount of $1,000. Thank you.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. And a motion to approve the minutes of September 22nd, 21, as presented in our packets.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I just
Town
have,
administrator?
just a few updates here. We talked about town meeting, obviously, the public outreach session, we touched upon that. Town meeting set for 10 a.m. at the Walpole High School, rain or shine. If it's raining, we've made plans to go inside and make sure everybody's socially distant and everything. We met briefly with the moderator today. He's comfortable with having a Plan A and Plan B for that day. Finance Committee's holding their public hearing on October 19th at 6 p.m. at the Byrd Middle School. We're holding it there so members can head on over to the public outreach session for town meeting reps later on that evening. And last item is redistricting. I spoke to Senator Feeney on Friday, and he gave me the heads up that it's likely that Walpole will be, the proposal right now is to take Walpole out of that district and put it in Senator Rush's district, who represents City of Boston, the neighborhoods of Forest Hills, Hyde Park, Reeville, Roslindale, West Roxbury. Right now, he represents Dedham, Dover, Needham, Norwood, and Westwood. The report came out today. I was trying to dig it up before I came down here this evening, so I haven't fully reviewed everything, but it's pretty much what we were told it was going to be. There was some public input period, and I'd like to get a sense of the board. Basically, if you want to, I don't think there's a shot that we could fight this, but I think if the board wants to press this issue, I think we should do it as far as we can. I can recall, maybe it was about 10 years ago, there was some talk about taking us out of Congressman Lynch's district, and we fought pretty hard on that one when we were successful, so it's not over till it's over, but I want to get a sense from the board. Do you want to ask me to write a letter into the state, to the committee? I actually spoke to the chairman of the committee Friday afternoon. He's the senator from Belmont, and he didn't provide me with much insight. He just did say the report's coming out next week. So what's the board want to do with this?
I'm pretty comfortable with Senator Rush. I mean, you know, I like Senator Feeney. It's been good to work with him. I'm sure that he'll still listen to us and talk to us in the future, even if we get switched over to Senator Rush. So that's sort of my perspective, so.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Paul Feeney has been really good to Walpole.
Yep.
But I think we can work with Senator Rush. We'll get to know him. And, you know, if that's what the state wants to do, then that's what we'll do.
Yeah, my only question would be the towns that are in Senator Rush's district, or whatever we call it, and how the things that matter to those towns, how they relate to Walpole compared to where we are today. That'd be the way I would want to think about it.
No,
So-
for sure. I've seen some other districts that have seen some changes, and I feel like they're making the same arguments. So I feel like if we present that case to them, they're going to hear that from us. They're going to hear that from anybody who's getting a change. I think is going to say, well, I identify with, you know, the southern Massachusetts instead of, you know, toward the city. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a valid argument for sure, but I also think they're going to hear a lot of that from a lot of different directions.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the person that's representing us
Oh,
is
for sure.
advocating on our behalf and not being swayed by, you know, a broader set of towns that don't really, you know, look like Walpole.
Yes, I think we should really connect with, if that's what happens. I just think we should connect with Senator Rush in a meaningful way. You know, what?
Early.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'll reach out to his office.
So I did want to ask, in November, I'd like to schedule a workshop between our two scheduled meetings on Tuesday, November 16th. We've talked about sitting down and talking to the police and fire about future needs, staffing going forward. I think that'll be a great time. It's after a town meeting and before we really start budgeting. I'd also like to really get into the ARPA discussion, talk about capital spending, take a look at what's been proposed. You know, again, my personal opinion is we should probably, you know, reach fairly quick agreement on spending a certain amount of money, maybe a third of what we have, what we will have available, and then plan another meeting, you know, 6 months down the road. And, you know, we're likely to want to spend this money over multiple years. There's no rush to identify all the projects at first, but I think it'd be good to have a chance to have that discussion. So does Tuesday, November 16th work? Is that too much to do in one night?
All of that in one night?
Well, police and fire will sort of be their chance to come and talk to us, first discussion, you know, maybe a half hour each for them to talk about their vision going forward, and then we'll schedule another workshop probably after the new year, and then, you know, have the ARPA discussion. So I was thinking like 2 hours total.
I think if Jody and I come before you for the ARPA discussion, it's more or less gonna be, we'll lay it out for you. I'm not looking for it, like you said, we have years to use this money. Lay it out for the board, let you digest it a little bit, because there's some things between Thursday and today that Jody's still learning from going with that firm. There's a lot of lost revenue that they've been able to identify for us, and that is more under the select board's discretion. We don't have to just stick to the framework that's been established, and I want to run through that with the board. It's going to be a lot for you to think about as far as options. It's a good thing for the town. We're going to be able to not just be boxed in, we can only spend the money on X, Y, and Z. We're going to be able to spend it on, I think, a variety of things, so.
I especially like the lost money you mentioned. So if we've lost revenue due to COVID, that would be good to know, you know, as early as possible and go after some
And
of
there's
that money.
a set formula that they've identified for us. I haven't seen the report yet. Jody came down with the good news today that it's more money than we're being given, that they've been able to identify, so.
Okay. So the question is Tuesday the 16th an available date for people? And if it is, would we want to start at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock? And I'm very open to whatever works for the board.
7 works, but I'm
7
flexible.
works better for me. What,
Yeah.
so how many, what is our meeting schedule in November?
So it'll be the 9th,
9th and
the
23rd.
16th, and the 23rd.
We meet the
yeah.
week of Thanksgiving, so, you know, if Thanksgiving week meeting was gonna have a bunch of stuff, we could always shift it into this date as well to make sure that that's a fairly quick meeting. I don't know if people are traveling, but you don't usually like to try to do too much just before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and we're also gonna have the interviews for the police department too.
Yeah.
During that month and possibly into December, depending on how, we're filling up pretty quickly in November, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks.
I think it would, having both chiefs in here would give me some opportunity, because I'm already working on the budget memo for next year.
Yep.
And at least it'll give them some time. I'm expecting their budgets will probably be due in mid-December or so. So it'll give them time to take feedback from the board, and the board says, let's propose some positions or do this or that. That'll be enough time, so.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to talk to the chiefs before we're looking at a specific budget number, to just get a general sense of, you know, like, where are we now with staffing and where should we be? The where should we be part is always hard for me, because there's not like a hard and fast rule, but it would be great if they could come in and talk about, you know, what do standards say about, you know, where we should be with staffing, you know, going. And I know we've been working hard to add staff, but it'd be good to have a flavor for, you know, are we catching up to where we should be? Are we still behind? Are we ahead? Whatever the case may be. I don't think we're ahead of the game, but. Okay, thanks. Anything else?
I just wanted to add one thing. I know that I've been keeping everybody updated that I'm in that study for my blood for COVID. And so I had one in June. So there's 2 parts to this. There's many parts, but 2 parts I get to know. One part is if I've had COVID, if I have natural antibodies, and I'm still negative. I've not had COVID. But then there's my spike protein level, which the hot topic right now is whether to get a booster shot or not. And I had my spike protein checked in June, and it was 1,116.3. and they say that you have positive results over 50. But in September, my results came back at 478.1. So I'm still over 50, but it is a significant drop. And so it's just a piece of data for other people when they're trying to decide what they want to do and what they're going to do. I am probably going to wait 3 months. I could get a booster shot now. I qualify because of my position. But I'm going to wait and see what my next 3 months are. And I just kind of wanted to offer that out there because there's just so much whatever information that everybody thinks they have an internet doctor after their name. But this is real data that is, something for you to think about when you're trying to make your own medical choices.
Thanks for sharing that info.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Motion to
Entertain a
adjourn?
Motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.